Being a parent is a pretty difficult job, foregoing plans and dreams to dedicate one life to a child, especially for a dad, not knowing if his actions on a child are going too far or not having enough influence. But being raised by a terrible father is an even worse experience to be part of. So we'll be focused on some characters who are just terrible dads. I'm not going to do a top 10 list, but talk about each dad slowly getting worse towards the end. So let us start with...
Oh, Meg, honey, I always thought you were beautiful just the way you... God.
He is easily the most notorious bad father when it comes to adult animation, in regards to his only daughter Meg, where we see countless scenes of him constantly harassing her. There are occasions when he acts a bit like a dad, but those are once in a blue moon. There's no rhyme or reason why he always harasses Meg. This causes people to come up with theories. Maybe this is Peter's way of showing affection to his only daughter, or maybe it's a deeper resentment towards her. We're not given any information about why she's the butt of the joke, other than the writer thinks it's funny for some reason. Despite Meg receiving the most harassment, at least despite being bad, Peter gives her more attention than his sons, to the point I think he forgets Stewie even exists. Let us start with Chris, where Peter just doesn't do any parenting, letting him do whatever he wants, causing him to be a weirdo. Sure, Chris became this way due to his personality, but without any guidance from his father to go out or be motivated to do things, he's just left there to waste around the house. Then his youngest son Stewie, when he's given any attention, he just causes blatant abuse, where he uses him as a bowling ball to stop Lois's car like Jesus. At the very least, he's a working man in the office, providing his family other than affection, because that's reserved for the boys. Peter often spends more time hanging out with them, drinking, going on trips, than his family, even less with his children. Of course, there's nothing wrong with hanging out with the boys, but at least keeps him away from being with his children so he won't harass or abuse them.
You don't really hate your son.
Yes, I do.
But you don't...
Head to toe.
No, really.
And his wife.
Look, he was a baby once.
Everyone hated that baby.
Hated a baby?
Conan Hill is one of the funniest characters in King of the Hill for how much of a complete degenerate he is. But this isn't about how fun Conan is as a character. Instead, we're going to be talking about how much of a bad parent he was to his son Hank. This all started when Hank was born in a baseball stadium in New York City, where Conan wanted to assassinate Fidel Castro, but was followed due to his wife going into labor, causing him to be born in New York. This created a stigma for his son. This continues growing up when one of the few things Conan hates the most is crybabies and softies, which Hank was both since, he was a kid. However, Conan saw that as a weakness, constantly scolding him, which still affects him as an adult. Hank noticed Bobby was an excellent marksman and wanted to enter the Funny Son tournament, but Hank couldn't even hold the rifle, even less fire it due to being too afraid to disappoint his father and receive more scolding, causing Hank to refuse to enter the tournament out of embarrassment, affecting his bonding with his son. As for his mother in this relationship, she was used as a tool, constantly mocked, with her only escapism being the miniatures she collected. Hank wanted to make his father proud by winning tournaments in the football games, but he costed a state championship due to his injuries, or tried to join the military but couldn't due to his medical problems.
I have a narrow urethra.
Despite his best efforts, Conan only saw that as failures, making him even more disappointed with his son. As decades went by, Hank made a life for himself and still attempted to get close to his father, but Conan was not having none of that. He still saw his son as a failure and a loser. However, as Conan got older, he became more chaotic, causing a lot of trouble for himself, which Hank had to help despite receiving little thanks from him. As if having one terrible family wasn't enough for Conan, he decided to accidentally have another one with a younger woman closer to Hank's age. Eventually, Conan being Conan causes another woman to leave him, taking the child with her. Hank eventually realizes that his father will never change, so he tells him that he hates him, causing him to go ballistic. And whenever he tells him that he loves his father, he just calls him a sissy. So there's no winning with Conan. Essentially, Hank is so deprived of a fatherly relationship that he views his manager Buck as his father, creating an inappropriate relationship.
I love you.
And his boss takes advantage of Hank's naivety, making him do his dirty work. As Conan got more senile, his antics started to grow more often, costing his life. At first, Hank didn't believe a stubborn bastard like his father would ever die, but the writing was on the wall, and he wanted to have closure with his father by telling him that he loves him, despite the bad parenting causing trouble for him and his mother. However, Conan laughs at him, mocking him that he's crying that his dad is dying. Peggy isn't happy to see this and tells him that his son does his best to make him proud, but all he does is spit on his face. With a woman scolding him, Conan dies happily. robbing any chance Hank could get peace from his dad, because all he ever wanted was to show some level of compassion or give him a handshake to represent his respect for him. As if being alive didn't cause Hank trouble, he had a will for him to complete involving a bunch of crude things.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Oh.
While doing this, Hank realized that he never knew much about his old man, other than he was a veteran. Despite this, Hank still tries his best to complete it in hopes to find some closure, which he doesn't. Conan is just a horrible father to his son and the people around him, causing him to be alone, with the most of his friends passing away, leaving him to die alone in bed, with the only person who somewhat cared about him refusing to acknowledge him. However, luckily for Hank, he met out that relationship with a wife who cares about him and a good son who tries to make sure he won't make the same mistake as his dad.
You would rather believe I'm evil than admit that you were a bad father?
Oh, dude, no. No, bad father all the way to the max over here. I'm a f***ing nutcase.
Now, Jerry's a pretty pathetic dude. If Eric came between him or his family, he used them as shields. He's cowardly with no spine to protect his family that he started. Rick calls him out for being a predator, using his pathetic nature to lure in people to sympathize with him so he can get what he wants, just like how he did with Beth, ruining any option she could have if Jerry hadn't gotten her pregnant at a young age. However, when you really think about it, who's to blame for Beth's life being ruined? It's actually Rick's fault, or at least a different version of Rick that even allowed his daughter to be attracted by this dude. First, we need to begin with Beth's childhood to get better understanding of why Rick is an awful dad. It seems growing up, Beth wanted the attention of her dad, but he was too busy working on his projects. Whatever attention he gave her were inventions to keep her busy. However, these inventions all had one common theme, that is to get friends, either by tracking or mind controlling them. The reason she has problems making friends is that she's like her father, psychopathic in nature. So instead of taking the time to raise her so she can better control herself and adjust to society, Rick instead builds a magical land so she could be a menace inside. So he wouldn't have to deal with the consequences she could cause in the neighborhood, wasting his time with the authorities that could be better invested on his projects. Now, this is where it gets a bit complicated, but it's important to understand Beth's situation. Rick, who we follow in the story, his real family was killed by Prime Rick, the first version of himself that built the porta gun. Prime Rick gave all the other versions of Rick porta guns except the one who we follow in the story. Many of the other Ricks ended up leaving their Beths behind in the promise of adventure. As for their wives, Prime Rick just deleted her across all realities. So, yeah. Essentially, Beth was abandoned as a child by Rick, with her mother just deleted, giving her abandonment issues. This just causes Beth to yearn for love, someone who cares for her, and this is why she ends up falling for Jerry, since he's the only person she meets who gave her the compassion that she wanted so badly in her life. Of course, the relationship is not on equal footing, because Jerry loves her based on how attractive she is, and she's able to tolerate his tantrums and pathetic nature. The reason she's able to tolerate those things is because Jerry gave her the compassion she wanted for so long. Other than that, they have no common thing about each other. Eventually, Beth got pregnant and started a family. However, her lack of parents gave her no parental skill for reference, because whenever her children need their mother for support, she doesn't know how to approach the situation at all, affecting her relationship with her older daughter. As we know, Rick comes back and Beth is happy to be with her father. In the beginning, Rick took advantage of Beth's daddy issues by allowing her son to be taken on adventures. Over time, she realized that Rick is not a good person, causing her to reflect on herself. Rick advises her she should just leave just like how he did and could create a clone of her. However, she makes him decide whether to stay or leave. But Rick cannot handle any responsibility, especially this emotional. He left it up to chance, not knowing who his real daughter was and erasing their memory about it. Beth is in these unique circumstances that who can even relate to this? So you know the saying, you should love yourself first. And she does it in the most literal sense because she ends up having a relationship with herself.
I want you back in my guts like I'm one of your sick little fillies.
This, of course, traumatizes the poor kids, and Jerry goes through shock. Currently, Rick is slowly starting to realize that he might not have been a good parent to his only daughter, so he tries to lecture and does his best to advise her in his own way. Any parental skill or father figure in her life she would have needed is already too late at this point. She's already an adult and has children that are getting close to being an adult themselves. Rick's irresponsible life brings trouble to her family, but like I said, he is slowly starting to be responsible. Beth, being her age, doesn't care about him anymore. She's lost any respect or love a daughter would have had for their father.
Fight back! Fight back!
Not only is Fire Lord Ozai a tyrant, conquering the whole world, destroying cultures and civilization, bringing misery to the poor civilians who are trying to live in peace, but what truly makes him bad is that he's a terrible dad. So Fire Lord Ozai has two kids, his son Zuko and his daughter Azula. When they were growing up, he knows that his daughter was shown promise of being strong and had no soul just like him, while his son failed to meet his expectations. So he's already picking favorites, seeing his son as nothing more as an embarrassment to him. However, his son tries his best to meet his standards. He still loves and respects his father, so he tries to show his commitment towards them and the nation by attending a war room meeting. While in this meeting, he hears the general's plan to essentially sacrifice a division of young soldiers as a distraction while they flank from the rear. Of course, Zuko finds it messed up that the loyal soldiers are being used as target practice for the Earth Defenders. So he voices his concerns, how unethical this plan is. However, by doing this, he insulted the general since it wasn't in his place to speak out, so they had to duel. Now, Zuko believes he's gonna run the ones with the old man, but it turns out he has to fight his own old man. Because Zuko did not know at the time, when the general was voicing a plan, he was doing it in the Fire Lord's presence, where he's speaking in Fire Lord Ozai's behalf. So Zuko insulted his father, not the general. Upon seeing his father, he doesn't want to do it, not because he is scared while probably facing the old man, but because it was completely disrespectful to fight your dad. Instead of talking behind closed doors to fix the issue like a normal family, Ozai instead uses the old methods and whoops his son's ass. This dude not only physically scarred his son, but mentally as well, where his personality completely changed after this, and his view towards his father. But I'm getting ahead of myself. As if beating him up wasn't enough, he banished him as well, and only to return once he captured the Avatar. But the catch is, the Avatar has not been seen in a century, and many presume he died. In other words, he was never meant to return home. Zuko had his adventures, but eventually after his multiple encounters with the Avatar, Zuko and his sister dueled with him, landing a grievous wound, believing that he died. So she sold the idea that Zuko was the one that killed the Avatar, and his father now sees the son that he wanted for a long time, showing levels of compassion that Zuko never seen in his childhood. The trauma that his father inflicted begins getting a toll on him, where despite getting what he wanted, the appreciation and respect from his father, he doesn't feel like he earned it. Not only that, he just no longer cares about him. Once Zuko discovers the Avatar is alive, he decides to help him and tells his father to his face that he's gonna train the Avatar to whoop his ass. Fire Lord Ozai completely broke his kid, where his son is going to train a dude to kick his ass and is fine with the Avatar killing him. He completely failed as a father, severing the bond of a fatherly-son relationship due to his hubris. But it gets worse.
I don't know, Dad.
Uh-huh. Don't know? Okay, well, I take everything back! And I'm glad I shot you.
Despite seeming like a normal father purely by looking at him, he's anything but dad. He's a cruel man who poisons himself and the people he interacts with, his family abusing them to feel some level of power over them. We need to start with his childhood to understand how he became a horrible father. Growing up, he was raised by a religious mother who sheltered him too much. This caused Clay to be spoiled and led him to believe that he was the only child of the family, making him feel special. He eventually finds out that he had 10 other siblings that were miscarried, making him the only child because he was born. This causes him to be upset and creates a prank on his parents, making himself look like he got shot. However, revealing to them that he wasn't dead but alive causes his mother to get a heart attack from the shock seeing her, her boy alive. This instantly causes his own father to resent him because he blames Clay for killing his wife, so he refused to interact with his son. Desperate for attention, Clay says things to his father to make him angry enough to hit him, and he enjoys it, since he mistakes this for compassion, giving him attention. Clay grows up and moves out of his house, eventually meeting his future wife, Blaberta. Now, she has her own issues, being that she's been raised to think that the only job for a young woman is to be quickly married like it's the 18th century. Seeing her friends being married and the peer pressure from her family, she finds Clay. She immediately wants to be quickly married, but he is not interested, and also they're strangers. After having him drink, accidentally making him an alcoholic, she managed to convince him by giving him something that Clay has been looking for, the love his mother gave to him. So they're both married. However, Blaberta was expecting her husband would give her the compassion and attention she's been looking for herself. She soon realizes that Clay does not care for her. He wants to be loved unconditionally, just like his mother did to him, and constantly drink to deal with his personal problems of his childhood. The both of them manage to conceive their first son, Aurel. Blaberta during her marriage is desperate for love and attention and seeks out other people, one of them being Danielle. Now, this becomes a bit of a soap opera, but it's important to understand how damaged she became. She believed she found someone who loved her, and he got Roberta pregnant. However, she realized that Danielle was not trying to get close to her, but her husband, because the both of them were in love. So she has her second son, and Clay isn't happy that his wife is defiling his marriage, even though he's doing the same thing. Clay is just a hypocritical, selfish man that refuses to understand his wife and just drinks for the pain to go away. This causes Roberta to feel numb, seeking things to make her feel something, even if it ends up causing herself to be in pain. Now it leads us to his eldest son, Aurel. He's a good boy at heart, trying his best to be a good Christian. However, he misinterprets his lessons from church. One of the most notorious examples is that he learns masturbation is a sin, since you're spilling your seed. So he interprets that in order not to waste it, he gets the people around the neighborhood impregnated. Another less disgusting example is that Aurel getting bullied, and his father is telling him that he needs to defend himself by making a fist, since it's like praying to God. So whenever someone makes any fist, regardless of the context, he just completely beats them up. Seeing this and knowing Clay's father issues, you think he'll take the time and be a parent to Aurel, teaching him to better understand what he did was wrong. No, instead, after hitting him, he gives him a lecture that's irrelevant to what Aurel was doing, or a horrible lesson that Aurel shouldn't be learning. Clay seems to enjoy abusing his son just like his father did to him. As for his second son, he doesn't acknowledge him at all, letting him do whatever he wants despite being 7, to the point that they mixed up 2 kids, but he doesn't care to acknowledge it. However, Aurel wants to bond with his father, so they go on a hunting trip and get the opposite of what he wants. Aurel sees a side of a father that no child should ever watch. We see Clay get completely wasted, revealing his insecurities to his son. And Aurel just sees a stranger who has his father's face. Eventually, Clay picks up his rifle and accidentally shoots his son, leaving him bleeding and defending himself against a bear while he wastes away sleeping. Aurel completely loses respect for his father and just sees a man-child, but it hurts Aurel because he is a Christian and stands to believe that one shall honor thy father. But how can you honor someone who refuses to take any responsibility that he shot his son, and even admits that he is glad that he did it? Clay just hides in his study room, getting drunk, counting the days to be out of this family. The interaction he gets with his family is abusing his son, and that's it. He doesn't show any love for his wife, but instead for his lover Danielle. Even his lover gets hurt because Clay is just a selfish and falls in love with another person. The whole problem of this family can be pointed back to this man who refuses to take any responsibility and just drinking himself drunk. What we're seeing in the Purpitons is a corpse. I've seen roadkill have more life than this family. It's just a group of people that are together purely because they're related by blood. Luckily, Aurel makes out of his family alright, and so does his siblings. Having a family that loves each other, not because they're related, because they care for each other. That was the terrible father's infection I could gather. Thank you for watching, and bye.